Well, hello, everyone. It is so great to be here with all of you. I'll start off by saying that I'm having a little bit of deja vu up here because just last month I was on a stage just like this in front of a big group of people at a Disney fan event in California. We call the event D23. Tens of thousands of fans gather to share their love for all of our Disney stories, to hear updates on new projects and experiences that are underway. It's something that I don't think many other companies could pull off like Disney does. There's tons of panels, and there's meetups, there's a massive convention floor where people can shop for anything and everything Disney that you could possibly imagine. Fans come dressed as their favorite characters. It's a ton of fun. And this year's show, it was particularly exciting because Disney Experiences, that's the division of the company that I have a chance to lead. We're beginning an unprecedented period of growth and expansion all around the world. We're investing $60 billion in new experiences. We're going to do this on land, we're going to do it on sea, and we're actually going to create an entirely new online universe. And I had the privilege of standing up on a stage and telling our fans all about it. It was amazing, and I want you all to have a sense for what that was like, so take a look at this quick video.
It is time.
Hello, Disney family! Hello, D23!
This is a magical day.
The ultimate Disney fan event.
Welcome to the new Disney Experience Showcase. I've got a lot to share.
D23!
A new nighttime parade.
The first Coco ride to a Disney park.
There's a famous house you may all recognize.
A major new Lion King attraction.
A whole new location on Pandora.
We're so excited to bring an Indiana Jones attraction to Disney's Animal Kingdom.
Will there be any snakes?
2 new Cars attractions.
Let's get her done!
For the first time, an audio animatronic figure of Walt.
It's Billy Crystal!
The first Monsters, Inc. land.
First suspended coaster ever in a Disney park. This isn't Blue Sky. We are gonna do all of this.
We are doubling the size of Avengers Campus.
We're adding 4 more cruise ships to our fleet. We are building a villain's land at the Magic Kingdom.
Do you guys mind singing something with us?
Plain white tees, everyone. Jaboozy, Susan Egan. Rita Ora.
Are there any gamers in the house tonight?
Coming to Fortnite is Dr. Doom.
This is just the beginning.
It's a lot, right? I don't have Deadpool with me tonight, but it's pretty amazing all the things that we announced. And what really shines through in those clips for me, it's the passion, the unbridled passion that our fans have for this company. And I think it's something that only Disney can inspire. These fans, they travel from all over the world to attend D23 because they are incredibly loyal and they follow every single move that we make. They're looking for every bit of news that we have to share. And we gave them an almost overwhelming amount of that news just last month. We're giving them more of what they love about Disney Experiences. We're going to give them more attractions. We've got more themed lands coming, more cruise ships, more shows, more characters, more Disney stories coming their way. So all of that, that's the what we're doing. But how then? How exactly are we going to do all of this? Well, these experiences are an investment in new ways of telling stories for brand new generations of Disney fans. And we absolutely have to get this right. And so that means how we tell these stories, it is incredibly important. And that's what I want to talk to you all about today, the how. To get us started, let me tell you a story from my own life. My son, he just graduated from college this past spring. For one of those projects, he had to give a presentation in front of his whole class. Now, my son Alex, he's seen me present to big groups before, and so one night he asked me, he said, "Pop," calls me Pop, when I'm standing up there presenting in front of a big group, I get so nervous. I don't feel like I'm able to tell the story the way that I want to tell the story. What should I do about that? Well, I said to him, "Do you believe it? Do you actually believe in the story that you're telling the audience?" And of course, he said to me, well, what do you mean? I said, the best storytellers are the storytellers that truly believe in their story. They believe in it with their whole body. They believe in it with their whole being. And this belief, it influences how they tell their story. It influences the words that they decide to use, the little details that they include, maybe the images that they conjure for the audience, even the way that they use their hands in a presentation. And I think an audience, they can then sense this, and the audience will jump on board. They can feel the story come to life. So I asked my son, when you're standing in front of your class, do you believe what you're saying? Do you believe in the story that you're telling? Now, to be fair to Alex, he was presenting to his economics class, so it's a tall order, but listen, the same approach applies to any story that you're trying to tell. I've had a chance to be with the Walt Disney Company now for over 25 years, and I believe in the stories that we tell, and I believe in the power that they have all around the world. For the past century now, we've taken fans to worlds of fantasy and imagination in ways that no one had ever dreamed of before. We've thrilled our fans, we've astonished them, we've made them wonder. One of my favorite things, how the heck did you guys do that? When we tell our best stories and when we fully believe in them, our audience then responds. And that's why our parks around the globe, they have drawn more than 4 billion in attendance over the past 70 years. 4 billion in attendance. That's why 7 of the top 10 box office hits of all time, those are Disney movies. That's why when I ask you, what's your favorite Disney memory, I'm guessing that something pops instantly into your mind. And this happens because of what we call the Disney magic. I know maybe some of you in the audience are thinking, well, that sounds kind of hokey, but let me tell you, it's real, and it's what makes us different, and it sets the Disney company apart. Today, I want to tell you a story about how we make that magic. I want to take you backstage, as we like to say at our parks, to give you some insights into how we make great storytelling the foundation of everything that we do. My introduction to the fundamentals of great storytelling, it started during my first week at Disney. I was invited into a meeting to discuss a construction project that was being planned for Main Street at Disneyland. And I can remember walking into that conference room and sitting down at the conference room table. Everybody was there. There was somebody from operations there. The marketing team was there. We had finance there. The creative community was sitting in that conference room. I was just excited to walk into the conference room and be at the table. I just received you all know the Disney name tags. I just got my Disney name tag. And all I'm thinking is, I can't believe I'm here working at Disney. And then the team started talking, and they started talking about trash cans. My first meeting at Disney, trash cans. They were talking about the fact that we would have to reposition the trash cans to accommodate this construction that was taking place on Main Street. And I remember sitting in that room thinking, who the heck cares about trash cans? Well, as it turns out, we do. I'm sure many of you have been to one of our theme parks before. I hope you have. When you walk in, you're taken right out of the real world, and we put you inside a story. And that story is meticulously crafted. Everything from the colors to the forced perspectives that we create, to the smells, to the sounds that you hear, and yes, even the placement of trash cans. After all, trash cans affect how our guests move their way through our parks. They also impact the cleanliness of Main Street, something that it's very, very important to us at Disney. Now, these things, they may seem small, but they are very important to the story that we're telling. I was amazed right there to see the attention to detail that this team had. Such commitment to delivering the best story possible. And I will tell you, right then, right at that moment, in that conference room, I knew Disney was the place for me. At Disney, we believe in the power of great stories. And this comes straight from our founder. I think you know who he is, Walt Disney. Walt arrived in California in the summer of 1923. He had these huge hopes and dreams. He didn't have much else. That fall in 1923, he sold his first series of short films. They were called the Alice Comedies, and it blended live action and animation together. And this marked the beginning of what we all now know as the Walt Disney Company. Over the next 30 years plus, Walt continued to broaden his horizons. After a series of successful animated cartoons, he launched the company's first licensing deals. He did this in 1930. 7 years later, he released the first animated feature film, I think you all know it, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which became the highest grossing movie of all time. In 1950, he produced his first live-action feature film. It's called Treasure Island. In 1954, he debuted his first TV series. And then, in 1955, he unveiled perhaps the greatest embodiment of all of his life's work. It was his first theme park, Disneyland. Any one of these ventures, any one of them, would have been more than enough for anybody. But as we all know, Walt was not just anyone. He believed in the power of his stories to actually change the world. And he envisioned a company that would allow those stories to become part of his fans' lives. He crystallized that vision in 1958. This is an image I love because, in essence, we're still following this model that Walt created today. Stories are at the center of everything that we do. They're the creative engine for our entire company. Walt's brother, Roy, he co-founded the company with him, and Roy was the financial genius. He was the perfect complement to Walt's unbridled creativity. And Roy described our stories as practically eternal. When someone loves a Disney movie, they want to spend as much time with those characters as possible. Frozen is a great example of this. Now, at its core, this is a story about the love between two sisters. We have two incredible Frozen films. There's another one in the works. And there are so many ways that you can connect with this story. And this makes the story stick. It makes it even more powerful. You could watch animated shorts if you go to Disney+. You could shop for Anna and Elsa princess dresses if you wanted to in our stores. You could play a Frozen video game. You could read Frozen books. You could listen to classic songs on your favorite streaming service if you wanted to. And you could walk right into the story when you visit one of our theme parks. At Disney Experiences, we bring these stories and characters right off the screen into the real world. This is kind of cool. Last year, we opened a new World of Frozen land, and we did this in our park in Hong Kong. And I got to walk through it with the creator of Frozen, Jennifer Lee, when she visited that land for the first time. This is a pretty cool experience. So here I am with the writer and the director of Frozen, walking into the story that came right out of her head. And I will never forget her reaction standing right by my side. I looked over at her, and I could see her eyes tear up as she put her hands over her mouth looking at this new land incredulously. What a moment this was. There are millions of Frozen fans out there now at Hong Kong Disneyland. They have a chance to have that same experience that Jen Lee had. When it comes to great storytelling like this, unfortunately, there's not a simple recipe that we can all follow. You could all right now go online and you could type in what makes a great story, and you'll come up with hundreds, probably thousands of different answers. I'm here to tell you what I believe sets Disney apart from everything else. These are things like being courageous innovators, bringing relatable characters to life, paying attention to those very little details, and so much more. And while I'm obviously focused on Disney, I hope that something in our approach can help one of you out there today in the way that you're telling your stories, whether you're standing in front of your classmates like my son was, or you're pitching a new idea, or maybe just trying to connect with a new friend. Speaking of connection, that's the first principle of great Disney storytelling that I want to talk to you about. This is all about emotional connection. Walt has this quote that I absolutely love. Actually, there are hundreds of these quotes that I love, but this one specifically speaks to his philosophy as a storyteller. Take a listen.
So in planning a new picture, we don't think of grown-ups and we don't think of children, but just of that fine, clean, unspoiled spot down deep in every one of us that maybe the world has made us forget and that maybe our pictures can help recall.
So just this summer, we saw a great example of what he's getting here in this quote, getting at in this quote. Has anybody seen Pixar's Inside Out 2? Okay, good. I figured a few of you had. What an incredible movie this is. It's a story, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's a story of a 13-year-old girl named Riley, and she's dealing with all these tangled emotions of adolescence. I've got to say, when I had a chance to see this film, it actually moved me. It tells a story that I think everyone can connect to. It's an honest and sometimes harrowing examination of the role that anxiety plays in all of our lives. Well, I went to see this film with my wife, and the scene where anxiety is frozen at the control panel, paralyzed by fear, that empty look staring into space, that completely stuck with us. Now, it's not uncommon these days to know someone who suffers from anxiety. We all, I guess, suffer from this in some way. And it's a difficult thing to watch someone experience, particularly because it's so personal and it's so deep inside. When we hit that scene, I glanced over at my wife. She looked at me, and something hit us. We could see ourselves up there. We could see our kids up there in some way. There was something so simple, something so clear and so relatable in that scene. Now, clearly, our audience believes in Riley's story. Inside Out 2 is now the highest grossing animated film of all time. And all of us at Disney are so proud of that movie, and we're so proud of all of our friends at Pixar. And for nearly 30 years now, they've invited us to make emotional connections through bold and unconventional ideas. They've done this with toys that can talk. They've done it with rats that somehow know how to cook. They've done it with houses that float, and so many more great stories. Their movies, they speak to that fine, unspoiled spot down deep in every one of us, just as Walt said. And when we get the honor of bringing these stories into our parks to extend that connection, it is amazing. Often these emotional connections are as much about who you're with, like family. I grew up right outside of Boston, in Medfield. Anybody from Medfield in here? One, two, maybe two. All right, we'll talk a little bit later. Well, listen, when I was about 10 years old, my parents took us across the country. We went to California for our first trip to Disneyland. And my father's favorite ride at the time, it was Peter Pan's Flight. Now, on this attraction, you get on a pirate ship it's attached to a rail above your head, and when you leave the station, you swing back and forth as you fly through the story. And I still remember, I'm not sure if he does, but I remember my pop saying before we arrived at Disneyland, Josh, it really feels like you're flying when you're on this attraction. You're not gonna believe it. And you know what? He was right. As our ship sailed through the air, he glanced over at me as if to say, see, Josh, I told you so. Of course, I smiled back at him, and that told him everything that he needed to know. Peter Pan's Flight was an opening day attraction. It was there in 1955. So when you think that nearly 70 years later, that maybe it's faded a bit, nope, actually just the opposite. It is still one of the most popular attractions in the whole entire park. How could this be? Well, it's because our guests have emotional connections to these experiences. When I sit in that pirate ship today, I'm immediately 10 years old again. And I'm feeling like I'm sitting there with my parents flying over London. And looking back, I can see that impact had on me in that moment. There's a good chance that I wouldn't even be talking to you today if I didn't have some of those emotional connections that I made with my family at Disneyland as a 10-year-old kid. So that's why I invited my folks here today. They're sitting right down here. I'm not going to make you stand up, but they're right here in the front row. And not just to tell them how much that moment meant to me and how it changed my life in some way. By the way, do you all know how intimidating this is? I'm 53 years old. I feel like I'm 10 years old standing up here in front of Mom and Pop, and I guarantee you that tonight I'm going to get a full review. Mom, particularly, go easy on me tonight. All right, well, listen, my parents, they passed their stories about Disney on to me. And now my wife and I share that connection through our son and through my daughter. And hopefully someday they'll share that with their children as well. But you all know this, my story is not unique. I'm guessing that many of you have a favorite Disney memory as well. Maybe it's a movie that you saw as a family or a game that you all played sitting around the kitchen table. Maybe it's the stuffed animal that you tuck under your child's arm at night. Or maybe it's the week that you all spent together at Walt Disney World. Whatever it is, people return to Disney because this is a brand that they know, It's a brand that they love and that they trust. And that all starts with emotional connection. Those connections, they have been happening every single day. They happen all around the world. They're building and building generation after generation now for the past 100 years. So just think about how powerful that is. Now, with all due respect to my father's excitement about his favorite attraction 40 years ago, we have come a long way since Peter Pan's flight. Many years after that ride with my parents, I was with my own family, and I was taking them on Soarin'. I hope some of you have been on Soarin' before. This is the first time it was opening in Disney California Adventure, and this is one of my all-time favorite attractions. You sit in a hang glider that lifts you in the air in front of this massive movie screen, and then we fill that screen with beautiful images of landmarks from all around the world, just like you're flying right over them. It's basically like a modern version of Peter Pan, but on a much, much grander scale. Now, before I took my family on it, can you guess what I told them? Yep, I said, it's gonna really feel like you're flying, kids. You're not gonna believe it. Now, going from Peter Pan to Soarin', that didn't happen overnight. Those two attractions debuted about a half century apart, but they're connected through another one of Disney's core storytelling principles, and that's innovation. Now, I know this. I know I'm in a room full of innovators here today, so I think you'll appreciate this quote from Walt.
There's really no secret about our approach. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors, doing new things, because we're curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. We're always exploring and experimenting.
So I bet everybody knows this, but do you know what innovation is driven by? It's curiosity. And you can trace this thread through Disney's entire history. In 1928, Walt released the first animated short with synchronized sound. And that meant his audience could better connect with his new characters as a little lovable guy that we call Mickey Mouse. A decade later then, Walt invented a new way to make films using the multiplane camera so that when you moved through a scene, it felt more real than animation ever had before. And to deliver his dream of Disneyland, Walt gathered a team of artists and architects and engineers and producers and master planners and writers and even more, and he brought them together under one roof. He shared his vision for what Disneyland was going to be, and he coined a new term for them. He called them Imagineers. Now, this is a very, very special group of people. They blend creative imagination with technical expertise. These are folks that dream and design and build our stories into actual places. Why? Because they're curious. Walt said Disneyland would never be complete as long as there's imagination left in the world, and we've been fulfilling that promise ever since. One of the last attractions that Walt had a chance to work on was Pirates of the Caribbean. I assume people have been on Pirates, yeah? Yes, okay, good, good. Well, that debuted in 1967, and it was a massive leap forward in our experiential storytelling. In this attraction, you're surrounded by action all the time. Everywhere you look, something's going on. Now, if you fast forward nearly 50 years later to when we started working on our new park in Shanghai, it had been a while since we had created a Pirates attraction. At that time, the film franchise had become wildly successful. In fact, people in China, they knew the movie better than the ride that it was even based on in the first place. So we decided to reimagine a classic for this new audience. We wrote a story, and it featured Jack Sparrow and Davy Jones, and we designed an all-new ride on a scale that we had never achieved anywhere before. The attraction became an immediate fan favorite when the park opened in the summer of 2016. And the Imagineers who lived and breathed this attraction for 6 years, they will tell you that there were some days that they weren't sure how the heck this was all going to work. But we were committed to doing something truly special for this new park. We wanted to make sure that the park felt like a Disney experience that everybody knows and loves, but that it had specific touches for our Chinese guests, so that we could bring a new generation of Disney fans. Our CEO, Bob Iger, put it this way when we were building that park. We want to build something that is authentically Disney, but distinctly Chinese. And I can tell you that all of this has worked incredibly well for us. Following Shanghai Disneyland, we created hundreds of new experiences around the world. And one of my favorites is the Iron Man experience at Hong Kong Disneyland. This ride makes you feel like you're saving Hong Kong from disaster right alongside Tony Stark. And we all love Iron Man in some way. But think back to the first Iron Man movie. When we meet Tony Stark, he's selfish, he's arrogant, he doesn't really know what his purpose is. And as the movie goes along, we see him grow and change as he discovers the meaning in his own life. And for all his money and genius and all of his talent, he's still deep down, he's just like all the rest of us. And you know what happens? That draws us into him then. We invest emotionally in his story. So then when he starts flying around in a suit of armor, whether that's on a movie screen or in one of our attractions, we all care so much more. We relate to the character inside the armor because we see he's flawed and that he's just trying to be better. That's relatability, and it's the third critical aspect of Disney storytelling that I want to talk about for a moment. Our audience, they need to see themselves in our stories, or they need to see who they aspire to be. Relatability is critical for our experiences business too. In our parks, you all probably know what we call our employees. We call them cast members. And it reminds us that we're putting on a show for our guests every minute of the day. And every single person on our team, there's 180,000 of us, 180,000 cast members, every single one has a role to play, whether they're in the parks, if they're on a ship, or even if they're in an office building, they have a story to share. Everything that we do impacts our guests. We invest in amazing experiences, and then it's our cast member who bring these experiences to life. They are literally the face of our brand, and they make that relatable connection with our guests. So I want to show you one of my favorite examples here, if I could. What you're about to see is a video of a family that was visiting the Disneyland park with her young daughter. And her young daughter, she's just so excited to meet her favorite character, and that's Stitch. She can't contain herself. She starts running toward him, and she's got a little bit of a stumble, and the magic comes in a way that the magic comes about in the way that Stitch actually reacts. So take a look at this.
Yeah. Can we do this? Oh no!
So simple, right? So Stitch falling down like that, as you could probably imagine, that was in no script that Stitch had. He turned what could have been an upsetting moment for that young girl and her family into a memory that they will never forget. The character became real by relating to the child on her level. And in a split second, he created a story for this family that they will be telling now for the rest of their lives. Here I am on stage talking about it. And now, thanks to social media, it's been seen by millions and millions of people around the globe, and it went viral because people could relate to that story. So we empower and we encourage our cast members to extend and to amplify and even create new stories for our fans. And when they do this, our storytelling, it's literally alive, with poignant and powerful connections taking place every minute for anyone and everyone. And every year, tens of millions of people, they walk through our gates. They're from different backgrounds, they're from different walks of life, and they all come together at this beautiful connection point. In essence, our parks become a crossroads for the world. Just last week, literally last week, I received a note from a guest who spent a couple days at Disneyland with her daughter, and she sent me a note, and she described the experience this way. The only feeling I can compare it to is experiencing the Olympics, everyone together, laughing and smiling and just enjoying and honoring the moment. I thought this was pretty cool. That's how we build a bond with our audience, through a story. Now, as we bring these experiences to life, you start to believe these magical places are real. Earning that belief, this is the trick. There can't be any contradictions. And if you spot something that doesn't ring true, well, then the spell breaks and we've lost you. So we pay close attention to the smallest details when we're building these worlds. This brings me to a fourth important principle in Disney storytelling. You have got to sweat the details. You have to sweat the details. That is the North Star for Imagineers. This is what they follow whenever they're creating a new experience. Our Star Wars lands at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, these are great examples. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, it takes you to a new planet never seen before in the Star Wars universe. But it feels like Star Wars in big, gigantic ways and in very small ways as well. When you walk through the land, you'll see the Millennium Falcon, you'll see X-Wing fighters, you'll see TIE fighters, stormtroopers will walk around interacting with guests. Everything that is in this land is authentic to Star Wars. Now, one of the best examples is a set of tracks on the ground that you're seeing up on the screen here. Now, it looks like a droid rode through there before the concrete dried. I don't know if you know this or not, but those just aren't any tracks. Those tracks are made from the original R2-D2, the original R2-D2. So can you imagine the discussions that we had on this one? So the Imagineers are extolling the virtues that are deep storytelling, and the finance team's over here saying, are you nuts? You're gonna get the real R2-D2 to roll through this and make these tracks? The answer is yes, the Imagineers, they won that one. Now, not everyone who visits Galaxy's Edge is going to pick up on that level of detail, but the diehard fans, they will. And again, here I am up on stage talking about it. And those fans, they appreciate how the Imagineers care as much about the integrity of the story as they do. I was president of the Disneyland Resort when we opened the land a little over 5 years ago now. And it meant a lot to me because I've been a Star Wars fan my whole life. Star Wars is actually Pop, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it was the first movie that you ever took me to as a kid. And I've never forgotten what it was like to sit in that theater. And I'll never forget the opening day of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge either. Just like my experience with Jen Lee that I described walking into Frozen Land, here I got to see Star Wars fans, die-hard Star Wars fans, walk up to the Millennium Falcon and just start crying. It was an amazing thing. Here it was, the story that they'd loved since they were kids. Suddenly, they were inside of it. They were actually living Star Wars. All those details create such an authentic experience. Our guests believe it. They believe it with their whole being. And we help them recapture that feeling that they had the first time that they watched Star Wars, just like I did. And we keep moving forward. We're adding new stories to the land all the time. Like these little guys coming out to join me here. I want everybody to say hello to our BDX droids here. I think you can see them, at least up on screen. So Imagineers created these as experiments, this new robotic programming. And when they first showed them to me, I came to research and development and I said, we've got to have these guys in the park right away. Look at them, aren't they so cute? Our guests love them because they feel like the droids that you see on screen, but then brought to life right in front of you. Now, these guys are technological marvels, but it is more than that. It's what Imagineers do with that tech that takes it over the top. These guys, they kind of feel like they're alive. They've got great personalities. Blue, your personality, I think, is marginally better. They're playful, right? I think you guys can even jump, I understand. And they embody everything that I've been talking about today. There it was. There it was. So these are relatable characters. They're created by courageous innovators that help us believe in the story that we're telling. And you know, it wouldn't actually surprise me if we were to see these guys in a Star Wars movie someday. I bet you guys are going to make it. And that would be then a full circle moment for us. That is for sure. I know you guys are having fun up here, but this is my stage. I think it's time for you to go. Take care. You guys, thank you for joining us. All right, well, listen, spending time with Imagineers and seeing their creations it's one of the favorite parts of my job. They're a great example of a fifth storytelling principle that I want to talk about, and that's all about courage. Imagineers are constantly taking big swings at ideas, even if they're not quite sure how they're going to pull them off. When I was at Disneyland, they came to me one day with this wild idea for Avengers Land. It was something that we were building at Disney California Adventure. And the Imagineers said something like this to me. They said, all right, Josh, here's what we want to do. We want to build a robot. It's going to kind of look like Spider-Man. And then what we're going to do is we're going to launch this thing up into the air. We think it'll fly like 60 feet in the air. We're going to do this inside the park, and it's not going to be tethered to anything. It's just going to be flying up in the air. And then we're going to have it land, and it's going to land in a net somewhere. And we're going to do this all day long. In fact, we're going to do it multiple times during the day. So it'll kind of look like Spider-Man's actually swinging through the land. That's what they did. They came into my office and they said that to me. They said, what do you think about that, Josh? And of course, like from a practical point of view, I'm thinking, well, this makes no sense. Like there's no way this is even possible, and it's going to cost way too much money to make any sense. And the Imagineers, they had no idea if they could actually make it work. But you know what? They sold me. They sold me on the story. It'll look like Spider-Man is swinging through the land, they said. And that was key. If we're telling an Avengers story, then of course we need Spidey there. And you know what? It turned out pretty great. I think we got an image of it up here. No ropes, landing in a net, Spidey, an idea out of our amazing Imagineers' heads. And it took courage to pitch that idea. But we knew that it was the right thing to do because it was right for the story, and we knew that it would amaze our guests. Taking these big chances on things that we've never done before, I think it's what sets us apart from anyone else. That can be a robot that's flying through the air like you just saw. It could be a new theme park in China. Maybe it's a cruise ship that we're sending to an untested market, or building Star Wars land at Disneyland. And you may think about that last one, building Star Wars at Star Wars land. That's a no-brainer, right? Well, it's a little more complicated than that, because that project took a whole lot of courage for our organization. Let me explain that to you through another story. When I took that role of president of Disneyland, I got to experience a tradition passed down from one president to the next. My predecessor took me up to Walt's apartment inside the park. It's a special, special place. Not a lot of guests have access to it. And this was a big moment for me. Some of you might know that Walt loved grilled cheese and chili. So that's what we actually made up in the apartment. We actually made it on Walt's own hot plate, just like he used to do when he was in the park. And then we went out on Walt's patio, and we watched as guests strolled by on Main Street. We talked about what it means to manage a place so special to millions of people, so special to the world. And in that moment, I must admit that I felt the weight of the responsibility that I was taking on. Because Disney fans, they take their fandom very, very seriously. And as I said at the beginning, they're so incredibly passionate about our company. And you know what? I love that. It's such a point of pride that we're held to such a high standard. In many ways, Disneyland is their park. We just stand here as the caretakers. Our guests sometimes spend their lives in our worlds. If we make a change, some of our fans feel like we're altering part of their personal story. And I know that because I'm actually one of them. I told you about my experiences on Peter Pan and Soarin' with my family. These are powerful, powerful memories. They're handed down from one generation to the next. So as we build for new generation, we make these decisions very, very carefully. For Galaxy's Edge, we had to make a lot of adjustments to our infrastructure at Disneyland so that we could build this new land and then prepare for the crowds that we knew that it was going to attract. And that included closing a part of the section called Big Thunder Ranch. It had been there for nearly 30 years. Well, during that time, I told my team, listen, if you have a question about anything that we're changing, anything that holds value to our guests, let's talk about that. No detail is too small. And they did. 4 or 5 times a week, I was out in the park. If we needed to move a tree, even a foot to the left, we talked it through. Where did that tree come from? What does it mean? We faced these challenges. Walt is in the same place. He faced these challenges too. He was constantly evaluating everything, always looking for ways that he could improve. And that's why I always remind my team, if we're going to make a change in anything, we must create something that's even better than what was there before. We may not always get this right, but I believe Walt would have wanted us to try. He would have wanted us to be courageous. Walt, he was an adventurer. He's a risk taker. This is the standard that we all live up to today. And that brings me to my 6th and final principle of storytelling, the one that binds all of these ideas together, is something that we call boundless thinking. It is an honor to work at Disney, to be trusted stewards of our legacy. At the same time, I challenge my team not to let our history be the gravity that holds us in place. We should never rest on past successes. We should always look for the next big idea, the next big challenge. If we'd always relied on what worked in the past, the Walt Disney Company, I don't think, would exist today. We want to be boundless in our thinking as a tribute to our past. As consumer preferences continue to shift, we have to adapt or we are going to be left behind. Disney's always leaning into new spaces that will allow us to keep meeting our fans where our fans are. And that's led us to an exciting new project. It's a collaboration with Epic Games to create an entirely new online Disney universe. Just as Walt took us from the silver screen to the small screen to the theme parks, this is our next major evolution. Epic Games is the creator of Fortnite, which is one of the most popular video games of all time. Now, if you don't play it and you have kids, I know that your kids are playing. Working with Epic Games, we're taking everything that we've learned about storytelling over the course of 100 years now, everything that I've been talking about today, and then we're pouring it into this new universe. We're inviting our fans to a place where their favorite Disney characters and stories and worlds, they all converge into one place, a place where they can watch, where they can play, they can even create their own Disney stories in ways that they have never dreamed of before. We're turning everything that our fans love about Disney into a digital playground, and they can be there 365 days a year. Now, of course, this is going to challenge us. We'll have to approach our storytelling in brand new ways, which means that we'll be applying all these principles to ensure this dynamic new universe exceeds our fans' wildest expectations. And as I said before, that's saying something because their expectations are very, very high, and that is a very good thing. It's the reason why I love working here, because those expectations are the direct result of a century spent delivering stories people believe in. I mentioned earlier how we're embarking on a bold new path forward with some of the most ambitious investments that our business has ever made. We're creating new experiences and we're telling new stories like Encanto and Indiana Jones and Coco and Monsters, Inc. and Cars. We're even dedicating an entire new land to Disney villains. Our fans were super excited about this one. And remember, when we're doing all this, we're not following a formula as we bring these experiences to life. This isn't a rinse and repeat. At Disney, great storytelling is part of our DNA, and we expect our entire team to be the best storytellers that they can be. It's the writer with a bold new idea, or the Imagineer with a spark of inspiration. It's the tens of thousands of cast members enriching and extending our stories every single day. We are on a relentless pursuit of perfection, powered by the belief that these stories, they can actually change the world. Now, my question for you is the same one that I asked my son. Do you all believe in the story that you're telling? Hopefully, you heard something here that helps you think about how you're telling that story, your story. I certainly believe in the principles that I've shared with you today. Because at Disney, when we connect emotionally with our guests, when we're relatable, when we pay attention to every single detail, and when we push ourselves to innovate courageously and think truly boundlessly, that's how we tell our stories that our audiences will believe in. So everyone, I thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. Thank you for listening to my story. Have a good evening. Thanks for being here, Mom and Pop.